Atheism subscribers, a warm welcome. Thank you for tuning in to this second segment, and thank you for being here. We are continuing our excellent discussion with Neil Kramer from thecleaver.blogspot.com. And in this second segment here, I want to backtrack a little bit to what we were talking about in the first one, and the idea of living in someone else's world, or living in a created reality of someone else. And this also kind of dovetails with the idea of why it seems to be so important, not only for the elite, but for even individuals to kind of imprint other people with their ideas and their beliefs about reality. And this is basically where I want to start. And I think one good example of this actually is a person like Richard Dawkins. I know that Neil wrote about this a little bit in his latest article, 2012, The Rebooting of the Planet. And an idea like that, would you say that that would be true, Neil, if we think of a person like Richard Dawkins? And maybe you could give us a little bit of background who that guy is, you know?
Yes, indeed. Richard Dawkins is basically, I think he started off life as a zoologist here in the UK. And he's a biologist, he's an atheist, he's a very intelligent guy, he's done some very successful TV work, but even more successful are his books and his lectures. And now that I've been very fair and nice about him, I'll also tell you the other side, which is his atheism, his ultra-atheism, as I would describe it, is a reaction to what has been a mounting kind of New Age and archaic revival, New Age Renaissance, archaic revival, whatever you want to describe it, which I think, although you have to be careful, one has to be careful that we do not go into the realms of, fairies and butterflies that, may distract us from the main goal, although they may have existence. His work is a reaction to that, and it is a reaction from the control system, from the New World Order, to bring people back into line, into a very, very hard, very reductionist reality. Dawkins basically is a man, I would say, with very limited spiritual ability, and although he has a very intellectual attitude, he is very virulently attached to the idea that everything is a mechanism, everything is nuts and bolts, everything is a process. And the kind of, Protestant reductionist ideology that he propounds is fair enough, and if he thinks, well, it's nonsense, all this kind of consciousness talk, and the fact that quantum physics points to the fact that consciousness creates reality, as pointed out by Amit Goswami, many years ago, and dozens of other people before him,
sure,
like David Bohm and Karl Pribram. The fact that those things exist is fine, and he can think what he likes. What's unusual about Dawkins is the incredible attention he gets and the incredible resources he gets to put his ideas forward. And I feel very strongly that is, again, very suspicious, very unnaturally lucky for this guy to get such a platform to talk about the God delusion and about atheism and about the nonsense of psychic activity, and that everything can be reduced to a mechanical, biological machine process, which, as you can probably gather, naturally I react to. But I give the guy, the freedom to think whatever he wants from me.
Sure.
And we must do that to live in a true human society. However, as I say, the suspicious bit is his platform that he gets, which is so easily rolled out before him, and he can walk into these environments where he has this rapturous reception, and a million hungry faces all waiting for his every word, and his books sell millions and so on. I have no jealousy whatsoever for this guy, believe me, none at all. I feel sorry for him. What's unusual is that his view is so taken up by the popular media. Usually this kind of stuff doesn't get any airtime. You might see it on a highbrow TV show or a cultural show, and we have, one or two of those over here, and I know you guys have some decent TV over there compared to the poor people in America who have very little.
Sure.
But even in those realms, it's unusual to see these topics discussed. So what's unusual is that he should appear on the national news, and he should appear in the top 10 books list so regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can learn a lesson to see anybody who has a favoured viewpoint and who represents a favoured reality structure is given all the resources they need and all the opportunities and all the breaks they need to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather hop up a hill one-footed with bare feet to the top and tell one person one real piece of information than have what he has. So, believe me, I have my own reality, my own credibility. I have no jealousy whatsoever for this guy.
Sure.
And there are other people, other thinkers who are on what I would consider a far truer, far more integral track than he is, who also do very well. So the point I'm making is that when you see somebody with such an incredible platform, be wary of them. So he's a guy to have a closer look at, to listen to what he says. He's taught me some things that are very useful, and he's taught me some other things to be careful of, so we can always learn from these things. But
of course, yeah.
Certainly a good example of what we were talking about earlier, where if somebody is very, very connected to their thoughts and to their reality in such a deep and profound way, and that is then backed up by millions of pounds of production values for books and TV and films and documentaries and tours and so on and so forth, it creates a reality stream, it creates a reality tunnel that becomes a probability for those who do not have their own reality tunnel. So as we were saying earlier, you may gravitate to someone else's sense of being and sense of reality if you do not have your own. So I would be fearful for those who are near this guy who do not have their own reality, because his is a very unforgiving, very machine-like world, which I don't think many people would actually want to live inside.
And the interesting point here also, I guess, to make is that, potentially where this might have spawned from, and also why it is important for this guy to be so outspoken about his ideas, and actually that this might be connected in some way with the kind of imprinting other people with this idea, because he actually might live in a world right now where he has problems with that everyone else either are so convinced of their own version of reality, so we have to kind of try to get into their mindset and try to control them and try to point out, hey, it's not like that, look at this, and he's so, very outspoken with the fact that this is the way reality is, and he's probably at some level, I guess, even afraid or scared that he might be left alone. I don't know, Yes,
I think so. I think a lot of really fevered egos like his are kind of catapulted into motion by fear. I'm glad to say that my path and my movement into, thinking about the universe was catapulted into being by curiosity and exploration and questions and a kind of natural, curiosity for these things.
Sure.
And I think that is a natural way. So it's very, very provocative to come out and say, this is not the way things are, this is the way things are. And it may seem a little ironic for me to say that, but I would assume that many of the people who listen to your show and these streams and these audios are already on a path and are looking for information and are sifting through the good stuff and the bad stuff, and are, you're speaking to a relatively enlightened audience, hugely more enlightened than the mass of people.
Oh yeah, yep.
So it's slightly different to the people who we talk to and who are listening to this. If only all the world were like that. So it's doubly unusual to get this guy to stand in front of hundreds of people and to announce and pronounce in front of millions of readers that there is no God, there is no creative force behind these things.
Yeah. The
creativity is a sign of a technique, of a natural Darwinian evolution, which is nonsense, absolute nonsense. So I would advise people to go and have a look, because he certainly tests your own belief system, and he's very good at explaining what he does. But he is the perfect example of a machine poster boy. So if he was in the Matrix, they'd be one human that they'd let live.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and let's get into that idea also a little bit, or tie this in with the idea that this actually might be something that is, I guess, sponsored from the powers that be, the new world order structure, that this is somehow serving their agenda. What do you think about that?
I think that there's an important concept that people need to get their heads around, which is that the imagination is not a playful little tool for painting pictures or writing books or telling stories. The imagination is the kind of fulcrum of one's ability to project and create reality. It is the mixing pot, the crucible, the palette, whatever you want to call it, whatever metaphors we want to use. The imagination is the engine of creation for us. It is our secret weapon. When the imagination is captured, as we see it described in that very phrase, that's a dangerous business. So if the control system, and we can describe them in different ways, the Illuminati, the Masons, the New World Order, whatever you want to call them, there is a control system there. That's beyond doubt. The control system wants to seed our consciousness by capturing our imagination. And the way it does that is it uses emotionally charged messages. And the biggest emotions are fear and love. And love is not a particularly useful one for these guys. So they much prefer to use fear. So fear, as we see it in the movies, in the disaster movies, and in the murders and horrors and what have you, and I like the odd horror film myself, but certainly the images that we encounter in these things are designed to seed consciousness with an emotionally charged probability. So again, I've covered this in something on my blog in the past, so have a look through it and you'll see this, but the huge number of disaster movies that occur on our screens and, spew out their rubbish filmmaking abilities, but the fact that they are so well funded, like Independence Day, Day After Tomorrow, War of the Worlds, and the new one, I Am Legend, with Will Smith. These things are there not to make money, believe it or not. They're not there as a display of acting capability, which is pretty obvious. They are there to seed consciousness with probable realities. And if you take a closer look at that, many themes that are very, very, very likely are explored, like massive floods, ice, sudden drops in temperatures that bring about a modern ice age, asteroid, comet impacts, invasions, off-world invasions, and so on and so forth. So all these, to any open-minded person, all these very, potentially probable things are there, but they have different feelings associated with them. So if there was off-world contact for me, which I believe there has been consistently throughout the planet's history, it's not a big deal, because I can imagine that with so many planets and galaxies and suns out there, there's obviously life out there.
Sure.
I would imagine any intelligent life that had been able to devise travel from one system to another would not necessarily want to interfere too much, and would not necessarily be restricted to 3D frequency. And so they're unlikely to want to come here and mine our resources or suck our brains out or whatever. So I think a lot of the activity that is demonic, as some people would describe it, is probably quite a local effect to this planet. So, everyone has their own interpretation of that.
Sure.
But these disaster movies are there to elicit emotional response. That's what they're there for. The plot is irrelevant. The actors and all that stuff is completely irrelevant. The emotional transmission that they create is purposefully designed by the control system. And this comes back to your point, Henrik, that they purposefully put these people out there, they purposefully put these films out there to charge human imagination with a potential reality.